It's an honor to have you here at the Saphira Center of Shamanism, where we break down the ancient esoteric practices of shamanism and the occult, bringing them into balance with the deep psyche. My name is Luke, experienced practitioner and mentor of the shamanic and occult sciences. It's an honor to have you here as always. Thank you for joining. Don't forget to check out my Patreon in the first link of the description of this video if you're wanting access to potent alchemical content. You can gain access to this Patreon at just £20 per month with loads of tiers that you can choose from. Or if you want to book me for a mentorship, second link in the description to book me directly. Thank you, thank you. So today we're going to be discussing the primal self after numerous individuals keep asking me to make a video on the primal self. Now we have discussed a lot on this channel about the primal self in different capacities. We've discussed demonic intelligence, demonic alchemy, taboo areas of spirituality, accepting paradoxical initiation, and finding relatability to the darkest aspects of human nature, all of which is connected to the process of embracing the primal self. But we're going to consolidate all of that today by really breaking down the primal self and helping you to understand what it is and what is required for you to actually accept it and fully embrace it in day-side reality, in day-to-day life. So, in a nutshell, first and foremost, the primal self refers to a spark of primordial chaos, a spark of dark matter, unseen energy that represents who you were before the conditioning. Now, a way that you can identify the rough qualities of your primal self is to look into draconic astrology, looking into draconic astrology charts as a guideline, not as a gospel or an absolute truth, but a guideline into looking into who you were before you were conditioned by society. This is deeply connected to the concept of the draconian current that is mentioned so often within left-hand path occultism, deeply connected to demonic alchemy and qliphothic work, but it is also connected to dragon energy and the raising of the kundalini. But realistically, when we do activate portions of our kundalini, which is an ongoing process, it is not a love and light process. It's going to unlock hidden aspects of the self. It's going to unlock repressed material to be processed and integrated. And not all of this repressed material is going to be pleasant in nature. In fact, a lot of this repressed material is going to be extremely taboo. Dark sexual fantasies, violent fantasies, aspects of you that are stuck in greed, aspects of you that are stuck in narcissism, aspects of you that want to control, aspects of you that don't look at dark fantasy, aspects of you that are stuck in anger and rage. These are what the primal self actually means. The primal self is a culmination of everything that you have repressed, everything that you are not owning about yourself, but everything that once integrated represents the only tangible gateway back to your truth. Now, this comes from the true understanding that every destructive behavior and every taboo aspect of humanity, no matter how dark, gruesome, or unpleasant it is, all of these things and all of these traits come from simple unmet needs that have not been met in our early years. If we do not have our emotional needs met, these get repressed, normalized, but they continue to run the show from the unconscious mind, manifesting an innocent hunger that never actually sustains, such as addictions, other destructive behaviors, and things like that. But the unmet needs that are not properly looked at and owned get repressed into not only our unconscious, but also the collective unconscious, and therefore impacts what manifests into the world. For example, paedophilia is something that becomes even more prominent within the collective the more people repress it, because nobody wants to find relatability to that archetype. Everybody wants to scapegoat it, and they don't want to own the fact that they have molested their own inner child without even realizing it, by repressing their inner child so deeply and denying themselves of true innocence. This is what creates the paedophilia-based archetype. Now, when we're accepting these aspects of ourselves, we're not letting them run us from the unconscious. We are understanding the unmet need that is fueling the desire so that we can integrate what that represents. And if we don't, then these parts of ourselves are going to possess the body and come through in destructive ways. Now, this is deeply connected to the concept of demonic intelligence and demonic archetypes, because these are, in a sense, symbolic gatekeepers of the repressed material that is of a more taboo nature. So everything that has not been allowed to be expressed in tangible experience is represented by the demonic current. So in unlocking this current and letting it flow through us at different capacities, we provide ourselves with the opportunity to access these deeper parts of ourselves. But very few individuals who actually work with these types of intelligences actually care about integrating these aspects of self. Most just want to interact with demonic intelligence for the sake of it. Most just want to interact with demonic intelligence because it's cool, edgy, and filled with aesthetics. Very few people actually want to do the deeper work and use them to access repressed material. Every demonic intelligence represents something that is within you that you have not integrated, and something which is within the collective that has not been integrated. So in order to integrate it, we have to willingly tap into the more taboo areas of ourselves, aspects of us that are frozen in rage, frozen in unprocessed and unintegrated desire, so that we can understand the innocent hunger beneath it and actually learn how to find a place for it in day-to-day reality. So the true embracing of the primal self requires you to go into your most destructive nature and understand what is behind it, so that you can bring it into your consciousness, into your tangible experience, and find a place for it in your day-to-day life without letting it run you unconsciously. This is what embracing the primal self really means, and we are going to discuss it in depth today. So definitely stay tuned. So the primal self is a fascinating topic, and it's basically the same as the shadow self. We can also refer to it as the kundalini or the draconian essence. You can also refer to it as the black flame. Okay, the black flame is the spark of primordial intelligence symbolically within ourselves that is always there but has been extinguished. So the whole idea behind the black flame being extinguished in left-hand path philosophy is associated with the repressed primal nature, okay? The repressed parts of you, okay? The neglecting of the unconscious mind in order to fit into what some traditions would call a clay-born avatar, okay? So you can interpret it in lots of different ways, okay? You've got, in some communities, you've got the serpent-born, referring to the true children of Lilith, in which we all are, but when that is repressed, it then becomes a clay-born consciousness. Again, I don't always like referring to it in that way because it implies that there isn't any evolution that's attained from day-to-day reality, i.e. being a clay-born. In the satanic community, you can refer to it as fire-born and clay-born, however you really want to refer to it. So the path of gnosis and pursuing parts of dark matter empowerment and alchemy is seen to be a concept which is rooted in the ignition of the black flame and connecting to who you actually are beyond what you have been told that you are. So this requires us to step outside of various constructs that are built from the illusion of righteousness and step beyond moral binaries entirely. So we are programmed with predefined ideas of what is right and what is wrong. But when we really go beyond the physical plane of existence, it's not so simple, okay? I'm not bypassing law, and I'm obviously not saying that, say, going out and committing a horrendous crime like beating someone up or something like that is, I'm not saying that that is right, but it also depends on how you view morality. And this is where it gets quite taboo in nature. The point is that what drives human beings to do certain things is always something which is much deeper than what you can see on the surface. Okay, deeper, unprocessed pain that drives human beings to do certain things, mainly because such unprocessed parts of self actually develop genuine autonomy within the unconscious mind and do have the capacity to possess the body. Now, I'm not excusing certain crimes. I'm not excusing murder. I'm not excusing rape. I'm not excusing things like that. But we have to understand the deeper layer to them and what causes a person to actually commit certain acts within their lives. It's way more than what we can see on the surface. Humanity is very, very quick to scapegoat and refuse responsibility for the input in which they are putting into the collective consciousness. But the whole point is that your relationship to yourself and what you're choosing not to look at within yourself is impacting the state of the collective consciousness massively. So some of the most repressed aspects of the collective still manifest as literal events and different things like that, purely because the entirety of the collective does not want to own that about themselves. They do not want to own that they have a part to play in dreaming that reality into being through simply what they are choosing not to look at within themselves. So the primal self, also known as the black flame, or you could even interpret it as the kundalini, or the shadow self, however you want to refer to it, is this dark matter intelligence that is trying to guide you back to it at some capacity. It basically represents that one place within you that you do not want to look. Can you resonate with what I'm about to say at all? Have you ever felt that you are being followed around by something? Like an underlying despair, an underlying emptiness, an underlying void that you're doing everything in your power, whether consciously or unconsciously, to try not to look at. So if you sit and stare into space and actually summon that feeling, what are you scared of that may happen? Can you resonate with that at all? Something following you around that you can't put your finger on, but it just feels like this underlying despair or underlying emptiness or underlying nihilism. This can be interpreted as your primal self, okay? That one window of opportunity that you have to step through it and return to something bigger and far older and more ancient than what you can possibly perceive. And it feels nihilistic and feels like despair because these are parts of you that have been in pain for a very, very long time. You are just not consciously aware of them. So by default, humanity is programmed with personas that are based off of righteousness, having to be the one who is doing the right thing, having to be the one that is committing the good deeds and doing this. Or it's like, as long as I'm doing this, then that's great. Christianity is absolutely flooded with righteousness, but when you really look underneath it, there is a lot of unprocessed pain within it. It's absolutely everywhere, this illusion of righteousness. Everybody just wants to be the one who does the right thing, but they are not owning what is actually pulling the strings underneath the surface, which is why there is so much chaos within the collective consciousness and why all hell seems to break loose, because the biggest aspect of the psyche is what is unconscious, what we cannot see. So when we're talking about embracing the primal self, we then have to step into our autonomy and see the illusion that is behind this massive wound and persona of righteousness within the collective consciousness, and understand that morality is not as clear cut as that. We have decisions that are either aligned to our true will, what our soul has come here to do, or not, realistically speaking. And often, you could even argue that some souls may have come here to commit horrendous crimes. It all brings balance to the collective consciousness. This is a very open conversation or slash discussion that we are having here about the true nature of humanity. And what are you going to do about it? Are you going to look at these different human qualities and actually have the elasticity and the accountability to understand what creates this behavior and understand what drives people to commit certain things? Or are you going to do what the majority do and just reject it without looking inside of yourself at all? This is the question that we have to ask, and how you answer it is going to depend on whether you are suited to the path of embracing your primal self or not. If you don't want to find genuine relatability to the darkest aspects of human nature, and you don't want to go into the aspects of yourself that you have deemed as unworthy, deemed as even evil, or whatever that may be, then walking this kind of path is not for you. You then have the individuals who say that they're walking this path, but in reality they're not. They're still continuing to scapegoat their shadow, scapegoat the spirits that they're working with, and all types of different things like that. Embracing your primal nature and integrating your darkest aspects is not defined by your ability to interact with dark energy. This is a massive miscommunication and misinterpretation within left-hand path occultism, purely because many individuals think that, oh, I'm interacting with a demonic intelligence, or I'm interacting with a demonic spirit, so then that means that I'm integrating what that spirit represents, or I'm co-creating with that spirit. But then the question goes, are you sitting with the repressed material? Are you actually sitting with that energy? Are you trying to understand where this intelligence actually fits into your personal experience, where the archetypes that it represents actually reside within your psyche and why they are there? Or are you only interacting with them for the fireworks and for the aesthetics and everything that's connected to it? So this is something that, you know, most individuals do not want to go into. And the problem is that, particularly within spirituality, particularly with the boom of buzz terms like shadow work in general, we end up creating lots of different layers, lots of what my partner calls overlays, whereby we create distractions around the core of the problem and then frame that as genuine integration. So an example of that would be, oh, I have healed so much over the last few years because of how often I meditate. That is a very big overlay that you see within the spiritual community a lot. It's like, oh, I'm healing so much because, oh, I'm doing Reiki every single day. Or I'm healing so much because I'm invoking spirits every single day. Or in occultism, I'm healing so much because I've entered the cliff off, or because I've invoked spirits, or things like that. Anybody can tap into these intelligences. It does not make you special in any way to tap into these types of intelligences. In fact, it requires a tremendous amount of strength to tap into these intelligences and understand that they are going to inflate the very things that you are supposed to see beyond. Let me say that again. These intelligences, dark matter intelligences that are demonic in nature, have the very role of inflating the very things that you are supposed to see past. They do not care whether you fall deeper into the falsehood or not. This is the thing. Every demonic intelligence represents something within yourself that you have not owned, something that has been separated from, something that has not been properly integrated, so it has created a destructive archetype out of it. A destructive archetype that is primal in nature because it contains a deeper unmet need inside of it. So demonic intelligence is a direct gateway into these aspects of self if you are willing to take it in that way, if you're willing to approach them in that way. Or they will completely inflate the very falsehood that you're trying to liberate yourself from. Okay, and how you know that somebody is inflating themselves is if they are attaching overly to the narrative. I'm a black magician, I'm doing this, I'm a vampire, I'm doing that. It's overly attaching to one narrative and then limiting one's consciousness to that. Okay, when in reality, what happens when you enter into these types of path workings and you start working with these types of intelligences, you're going to have the very falsehood that you are supposed to see beyond and liberate yourself from inflated so that you can look at and deal with it. Most individuals who work with darker intelligences do not get past the surface level of it. In other words, that their falsehood gets completely inflated. They fall into the illusion of thinking that they need to destroy their ego, thinking that they have destroyed their ego, and different things like that. But in reality, they are not seeing past their own self-deceptions. They're not seeing past their own falsehood, and they're getting trapped in the net of it instead of actually understanding who they are beyond it. So realistically, to properly do the work and actually interact with primal intelligence in a deep and profound way to actually yield genuine and tangible results, both in day-to-day life and in terms of your perception of reality itself, it requires a tremendous amount of grounding and discernment because anybody can tap into such intelligences. Not many individuals have the genuine strength to actually see past their own self-deceptions, and most will just get completely stuck in it and continue to perpetuate in it and frame that massive overlay and distraction as genuine evolution when it's not. Okay, evolution is paradoxical. Evolution is often associated with what you are willing to put down, what you are willing to let go of, what you are willing to consolidate within yourself, not what you are willing to use to fuel an illusionary sense of self that was built from pain in the first place. So the true embracing of the primal self requires you to see past your own deceptions, to see past your own projections, to see past the overlays that you have been putting over your evolution around the core aspects of your primal nature that you need to look at and own so that you can understand where it fits into dayside reality. This is what embracing the primal self is all about. So, say for example, we work with an intelligence. We tap into a spirit, such as a perfect example is Asmodeus, one of my absolute favorites. Asmodeus is the personification of unintegrated passion, passion that has been exiled and it has turned violent and aggressive. So, say, for example, if we were not allowed to be in our passion, or we learnt that it's not safe to be in our passion, or we were shamed for being in our passion, then that passion gets repressed and that creates an unmet need. We have a need to be in our passion, but we actually become dissociated from it as a result of it. But that need for genuine passion doesn't go away. It represses itself within the collective unconscious and within the individual unconscious and becomes violent and aggressive. Repressed passion that is not owned and integrated then creates distortion. So what is the inversion of passion? The inversion of passion, when your needs are not met, aggression, violence, maybe even sexual fantasy that appears taboo or unacceptable. All of that is associated with the archetype of Asmodeus. So most will interact with Asmodeus for the surface level of it. Oh, Asmodeus is this. Oh, Asmodeus can help me gamble and find luck and different things like that, like the surface level descriptions that are outlined in the Goetia for Asmodeus. But when you really look deeper, Asmodeus is there to uproot your most angry aspects of self. Okay, aspects of you that want to kill. Aspects of you that are so deeply in pain that you did not even know about. Okay, and this can happen in many different ways. It doesn't always happen through violence. It can happen through piercing silence. So it's all associated with your willingness to look at why that aggression is there in the first place. Whereas what most individuals will do when they encounter it is that they'll do what they can to find a projection point or distraction from it in their external environment. So they'll try and put it onto something that's happened in the news. They'll try and put it onto some crime that some person has committed, and they'll project all of the responsibility onto that and not own it. Is that owning the primal self? Is that embracing one's primal nature? No, it's absolutely not, because it's just creating more distraction. How can I separate myself from this that feels painful to truly feel and embrace? Another example, we could use the demon Mammon. who is the ruler of greed, you could say, is associated with greed. Okay, but then most practitioners interact with Mammon for greed. They are approaching it from greed. So then they're approaching Mammon from the very falsehood in which Mammon is actually there to help you break and see beyond. So what will Mammon do if you interact with Mammon? He will amplify your greedy tendencies. And it's then your role, your job to see past that greed and understand what's underneath it. Understand what has created greed. Understanding the low sense of self-value that creates perpetual abundance-related trauma. So then embracing the primal self in regards to Mammon is welcoming the greed, letting yourself feel the greed, but also having the strength to understand why it's there in the first place, pursuing the unmet need beneath the surface. Let's talk about another very interesting one. Astaroth, okay? Astaroth, the ruler of Gug-Shiblar in the Qliphoth. Astaroth is a lot associated with addictions and the illusion of desire. Gug-Shiblar, which I will make a video about at some stage, Gug-Shiblar is associated with the fiery pit of desire, also referred to in many traditions as the abyss of desire. Okay, now the abyss of desire is associated with the void that is created within your sense of self that comes from distorted desire. So in other words, a core theme within the realm of Astaroth is going to be addictions, okay, and what actually creates addictions. So addictions are cultivated through simple unmet emotional needs. It's a well-known fact that if somebody is not held close enough as a child, for example, if someone's born, especially if someone's born in an incubator, or not born in an incubator, but is born prematurely and has to go into an incubator, they're separated from the physical contact that is required for the essence of the heart to actually beat in harmony. So what does that mean? That then means that statistically, that individual may develop addictions in their later life because the void was created in the heart. They were not held close enough in early years. And look at how common addiction is on different levels. Sometimes it can be piercing, sometimes it can be life-destroying, and sometimes it can be covert and hidden in habits that on the surface don't appear distorted, but actually they're ruling the show from beneath the surface. So what we're talking about here with Astaroth is that we're understanding what our addictions are, but also having the strength to actually go into what's actually repressing the real unmet need beneath the surface. And the only way to properly break that addiction is to understand the need of the inner child so that we can integrate it into day-to-day life. For example, if somebody is addicted to alcohol, they can go to AA to help them get off of the alcohol. But is AA a sustainable thing? Is it sustainable long term? Great for getting somebody off, great for getting somebody onto a care program, but unless the deeper wound that was behind it in the first place is dealt with, then the void will remain within the system. The void remains within the system. Or the attention will be distributed towards someone else. Okay, I had a family member once who used to smoke loads of cigarettes. Okay, used to smoke loads of cigarettes and then stopped smoking because they started coughing. But then they found that they would eat a whole packet of sweets every night, yeah, and then completely overdose on sugar every day, not realizing that actually they have swapped the addiction for something else that allows immediate release. Okay, somebody could stop smoking marijuana, for example, and then they start smoking tobacco more and more. So then it's then creating a further overlay. It's creating a further distraction from the core of why that addiction is there in the first place. Okay, so then that is not embracing the primal self that's underneath it. Okay, if I was to really summarize what I'm saying here, the primal self is addressing the void inside of you. Okay, the black flame, the primal essence, the shadow, however you want to refer to it, is the unconscious aspects of yourself. Okay, the underlying void. That's why it often feels like despair. The underlying void that is always there that needs to be addressed. And what is the void? The void is hungry. Think of a black hole that drains everything around it, sucking it into destructive dark matter energy. It's exactly the same thing. In order to embrace the primal self, you need to embrace your hunger. Embrace your desire. Embrace what is causing you to move towards certain things within your life. What is actually creating the hunger of your experience? Okay, and embracing it is then understanding what's truly driving that. Okay, most individuals who work with dark matter intelligences will not do that at all and will actually become more and more hungry. Okay, more and more hungry, creating more overlays and more distractions from their evolution. Okay, I've known numerous people who have explored so many different areas of occultism, areas of spirituality, healing programs, path workings, all of these different things, but has been coming from a void inside of them. Okay, a void that is never going to be filled unless we understand the origin of the hunger. And the origin of the hunger is always going to be super, super simple. Super, super simple. Something that was so immensely simple but did not happen as a child. Okay, we weren't held when we needed to be. Okay, we weren't heard when we needed to be heard. We weren't seen when we were needed to be seen. Okay, we didn't have the freedom that we needed and different things like that. For example, somebody who can't commit to relationship dynamics may have learned from their early years that relationships are restricting. I was definitely one of these individuals. Okay, I used to see relationships as a massive restriction on my own evolution. So I used to do everything in my power to distract myself from being in a relationship. I used to be like, how can I not be in a relationship? But then that came from having my own freedom restricted as a child. So then that creates a destructive behavior, a behavior that's then denying myself of my evolution because of something that has been unprocessed inside. So then that wound will have created the wound of needing to have freedom and autonomy, but avoiding intimate connection, feeling like I need to avoid intimate connection in order to maintain one's freedom. And this is, again, very, very common for people who have experienced a lot of relational trauma. People then create the notion that they don't need other people and that they need to be on their own all the time because they've experienced so much pain from relationship dynamics. But then the primal aspect of that is then understanding, why are you hungry for freedom? Why are you hungry for separation? Because you were deprived of freedom at some stage. You were deprived of freedom and autonomy and sovereignty at some stage of your process. So the primal essence is hungry, it's starving. Starving because of the unprocessed pain that has not been allowed to fully express itself. So every hidden pattern, every destructive tendency, every violent desire, every sexual desire, every taboo has a hunger that is behind it that is fueling that behavior. And unless that hunger is addressed, and unless that simple need is not met, and unless we find a place, unless that need is met, and unless we find a place for that need in our day-to-day lives, then that destructive behavior will always be there. We will always have that sexual desire. We will always have that violent fantasy. We will always have anger. We will always have controlling tendencies. We will always have narcissism that executes itself in an unhelpful way. So the primal self, to really summarize here, is hungry. It's a void that needs to be merged with so that you can actually ensure that desire is coming from a sustainable place, so that you can genuinely ensure that desire is coming from a place of genuine authenticity, so that it is not being driven by pain. And desire that is driven by pain creates destructive results. Okay, you see it all the time. If somebody goes into occultism from a place of pain and power struggle, then they create more pain and power struggle for themselves because that's the core desire that's fueling it beneath the surface. So truly merging with the primal self is learning how to consume from your reality, learning how to consume your reality in a way that actually meets the original need, not fueling it. Okay, most individuals by default are seeking reinforcement for hunger that is coming from a wounded place. They are seeking power because they feel powerless. They are seeking knowledge because they feel powerless. most are seeking that reinforcement of the very patterns in which the primal self is there to help you break. For example, somebody could, say, have a certain belief about what reality is. They may be in complete rejection of their shadow, so then they're going to find a teacher that then resonates with their own protective mechanisms. They're going to find a paradigm that resonates with their own protective mechanisms. Somebody who has experienced so much pain in their lives and it's not been properly owned, then creates a hunger inside that's not being owned, and then maybe because they're in rejection of their own primal nature, maybe they then seek a Christian paradigm whereby they're going to be validated in that falsehood. They're going to be validated in the need to separate themselves from something. Maybe somebody who feels powerless will try and seek a shamanic paradigm, yeah, whereby they become a shaman so that they can call themselves these things, when in reality, what's driving that hunger is extreme pain that they're not willing to look at, an extreme power struggle. So they seek the reinforcement for a desire that is coming from illusion in the first place. So the real medicine is to understand what is actually fueling our desires, what is fueling our actions, what's driving our hunger, and being willing to dig deep into the simple child need that was not met and that has created that destructive tendency. Because when the inner child does not have its needs met, those needs become primal. They become aggressive. Okay, and then we try and do everything in our power to get rid of them and then frame them as evil, project them onto demons, project them onto the world around us, project them onto conspiracy theories, project them onto politics. And all of that creates further repression and further reinforcement of the very pattern in which the primal self seeks to destroy. So you have to own what's driving your hunger. You have to journey into the taboo aspects of yourself, understand why the anger is there, understand why the violent impulses are there, understand what they are doing there, and you're not letting them take over you by doing that. People have the belief that, oh, but if I go into these areas of myself, then I'm going to attract more suffering. Complete and utter nonsense, total and utter bullshit that has been fed into by the spiritual community that gaslights you for feeling your emotions. Gaslights you for feeling your emotions. Oh, if I feel this sadness, then I'm going to attract a lifetime's worth of sadness. Oh, if I feel this anger, then I'm going to attract a lifetime's worth of anger. No. If you don't look at the anger, you're going to attract angry people into your reality. If you don't look at the sadness, if you don't look at the depression, and if you frame it as that and try and get rid of it and do everything in your power to avoid it, that is going to bring more of that into your reality until you listen to your primal nature and embrace your primordial self. Absolutely essential. Absolutely essential topic to understand. Massive. I could talk about it all day, but I'm going to leave it there, okay, before my head bursts off. So thank you guys. Thank you for coming. I appreciate you here on this channel. Thank you for the support. Thank you for the subscriptions. Do hit hype if you could. Do hit subscribe if you haven't already. Do check out my Patreon if you haven't already. And I will see you in the next video. Thank you.